Tired of the same old podcasts every week? When you're ready for something different, come give us a shot.
Greetings. We're Technically a Conversation, a podcast for curious people by curious people.
Every week, we take turns sharing a new topic, and the other host has no idea what the topic will be.
Our topics are all over the place, from light and funny to dark and sometimes spooky.
We've covered everything from true crime, historical events and people, pop culture icons, the supernatural and occult.
I like that.
And legends and folklore.
My favorite. We're like the Dollar Tree stuff you should know.
Except completely different. No matter what the topic is, we try to make the episodes funny.
Yeah, you may not want to advertise that. Our jokes aren't very good.
What are you talking about? My jokes are fantastic.
Hey, I get paid to laugh either way.
Wait, you get paid?
Check us out at technicallyaconversation.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Shout out to the 11 and a half people that listen to us on Google Podcasts. Wait, you said you were getting paid?
Hello and welcome to Reverie True Crime. I'm your host, Paige. It was the beginning of June 2000 when someone made a 911 call about a fire in an alley in Chicago, Illinois. Not long after hanging up with the operator, the person realized this was not just a random fire, it was a burning body. The witness called 911 again to report their discovery. The Cook County medical examiner confirmed that the victim, identified by his mother as 22-year-old Oscar Velazquez, had passed away before his body was set on fire. Oscar had been murdered. In May of 2000, 17-year-old Regina DeFrancisco went out on a date with her boyfriend, Oscar Velazquez. He was a very kind young man who worked as a truck driver. The two had been dating for about a month. Regina deceived him during their date, saying she was going to go to jail. She told her 15-year-old sister, Margaret DeFrancisco, to go to Oscar and tell him that she needed $1,000 for bail. Being a sympathetic young man seeking to lend a hand to this girl that he had eyes for, Oscar gave Margaret the money for what he thought was Regina's bail. Oscar was described as an extremely kind, clean-cut kid. He would give someone the shirt off his back if they needed it. Oscar had a big heart, and everyone looked up to him. Though being a kind-hearted person towards these sisters would only leave them wanting more from him. Oscar was the kind of person they believed they could manipulate and use for their own financial gain. People who knew Regina said she was magnetic and charming. Margaret admired her big sister a lot. So when Regina began rubbing elbows with a Latin King gang member named Johnny Rivera, Margaret fell in line, joining her sister in behavior that has been called questionable. Regina would soon reel Oscar into her world. She was at Johnny Rivera's apartment in April of 2000 when narcotic officers came to his apartment and raided it. They found 2 kilos of cocaine. Regina was taken to jail. After her court appearance, she walked outside and saw a young man drive by. She flagged him down and asked for a ride. The driver, Oscar Velazquez, wanted to help. That car ride is what started their relationship. When Regina needed help again, he was eager to do whatever he could for her. A little time went by, and Oscar realized the two had swindled $1,000 out of him. He made 24 calls to the DeFrancisco home between May 30th and June 4th, wanting his money back. On the 6th of June, Margaret called her friend Veronica Garcia and asked if she could borrow a gun from her, allegedly to put fear into Oscar, to shake him up to the point he would give them whatever money he had. Veronica obliged, and Margaret asked her to bring the firearm over to her house. When Veronica arrived at the home with her boyfriend's .38 caliber semi-automatic pistol, Regina and Margaret DeFrancisco were trying to cook up another plan to bleed more money out of Oscar. That evening at 7:06, Regina called Oscar, and not long after that, he drove up to the girl's home. Margaret greeted him at the door, asking him if anyone knew he was there. He told her that nobody knew where he was. For the DeFrancisco sisters, that was a relief. Margaret told him that Regina was in the basement, waiting for him with his money. As he walked ahead of Margaret, she was holding a gun behind her back. Oscar would have never guessed he was living his last moments as he walked down the steps into that basement. Suddenly, Veronica heard one gunshot come from that direction. Then she saw Margaret dash upstairs with a gun in her hand. Veronica rushed to the basement and saw Oscar on the floor, his ears spilling blood and his right hand shaking. Regina and her sister collected Oscar's keys, his cell phone, the chain from his neck, a gun, and his wallet that had at least $600 in it. Margaret and Regina divided the money between themselves. The girls had a plan, but in the meantime, there was an obvious mess that needed cleaning up. The sisters tried to clean up the scene, then wrapped Oscar's body in clear plastic and a flower-patterned comforter. Afterwards, a neighbor witnessed Veronica, Margaret, and Regina carrying his body out, stuffing him into the trunk of his own car, a white Camaro. The neighbor did not know there was a body in the plastic at the time. The girls took his body to an alley in Veronica Garcia's neighborhood. Regina claimed that Veronica was the one who was adamant about getting rid of his body and anything that could identify him. That was her excuse as to why she and Margaret doused his body in nail polish remover and cleaning solution, then set Oscar's body on fire. On June 7, 2000, Jessica Tellez Benitez went to the sisters' home, and she instantly saw a huge stain by the front door. She was taken aback because the discoloration appeared to be blood. Regina was mopping the basement stairs when Jessica walked in, and she curiously asked Regina about the large stain by the door. Regina allegedly told Jessica, quote, "We killed a guy." Regina also supposedly revealed to Jessica that they lured Oscar there, promising him $1,000, and how they never really intended to give him any money at all. According to Jessica, Regina did not stop there. She allegedly recounted to Jessica how they had laid plastic out on the floor before he was shot, and how she was surprised when she discovered Oscar had a gun on him because he wasn't a violent person. Regina argued that that is not what took place at all, and that she never told anyone she had plotted to rob or murder Oscar. Though the neighbor Maria, who saw them carrying the plastic and loading it into the white car, said about a week after that happened, Regina and Margaret came to her sobbing about killing a man. Regina went into detail to Maria about Margaret shooting Oscar in the back of the head and how it was done all for his money. Also, how she, Veronica, and Margaret disposed of his body and set his corpse on fire. Margaret and Regina eventually took Oscar's car and went into hiding. They were seen driving it in the beginning by Oscar's brother, and soon after they attempted to sell the car. Nobody bought it, so they abandoned Oscar's car and set it on fire too. Regina and Margaret were questioned by police, giving the officers different stories. When they left the station, they went into hiding. Their game of hide-and-go-seek with authorities lasted for 2 years before the police finally found them. 19-year-old Regina and 17-year-old Margaret DeFrancisco were shown on the TV show America's Most Wanted in March of 2002 for the second time. The first time it aired, there were no leads. Not long after the first time the show was broadcasted, a rerun of the episode was aired, catching a viewer's attention who called the FBI with information. Margaret was arrested at her aunt's apartment in Roscoe, Illinois on the 24th of March, 2002. She was charged for the murder of her older sister's boyfriend, Oscar Velazquez, as well as unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. Regina was also facing a murder charge, but she stayed in the shadows for several months before she was captured. The police didn't know yet that she had run to a different state. Finally, Regina DeFrancisco was arrested in Dallas, Texas, months later on October 18, 2002. Chicago FBI reported that she was taken into police custody after a traffic stop and a high-speed chase. She was indicted on the same charges as her sister and was transferred back to Chicago, where she and Margaret would sit behind bars awaiting their trial, which would take place 2 years later. When investigators questioned Regina, she told them they should be focusing their sights on their acquaintance, Johnny Rivera. Police did so, and he was quickly cleared. In July of 2004, the trial for the DeFrancisco sisters began. Their plea was not guilty by reason of self-defense. Veronica Garcia, who gave the girls the gun, was at the home when the murder happened and assisted with the cover-up, made a deal with the prosecutors. Veronica was also charged with murder, but if she pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of concealment of a homicide and would agree to be the star witness on the stand, she would get a shorter prison sentence. It was a deal she couldn't refuse. When Veronica took the stand, she testified that she did give Margaret her boyfriend's gun, which she thought was going to be used in a robbery, not a murder. Veronica was adamant that she did not see the shooting happen, as Regina claimed she did, and she alleged Oscar had a gun on him. Though the gun used to kill Oscar was never found, and neither was a gun that supposedly belonged to him. Their friend Jessica also testified, and her story was in line with what Veronica Garcia, another witness named Luciana Macias, and the neighbor Maria Constantino all testified to. Jessica said Regina and Margaret admitted to killing Oscar. Margaret even told Jessica that she had kicked Oscar in the head for good measure, quote, so he could die faster. Margaret DeFrancisco took the stand on July 7, 2004, to testify that she shot Oscar in self-defense. She said he was irate about her and her sister duping him out of $1,000. Margaret said she had to shoot him in order to save Regina, and that she couldn't remember pulling the trigger. It was all a blur. When asked why she did not tell the police about all of this from the start, she responded, quote, "We would have gotten in trouble. If I told the truth, I would have been there longer." Regina took the stand in her trial as well. She told the jury that she was walking out of her bedroom and Oscar was in the living room. She said Oscar followed her to the basement as he began to scream, curse, and point his gun at her. Regina said all she could do was lay on the floor in the fetal position, begging him not to kill her. The next thing she said she remembered was hearing a bang and seeing her sister with a gun in her hand and Veronica standing next to her. Regina also said that it was all Veronica's idea regarding how to get rid of Oscar's body. Regina did not like being grilled on the stand, calling the state attorney evil for asking her why she ran away if her story was true. She responded, quote, "I was going to run away forever so Margaret wouldn't have to go to jail forever. God, you're evil." When Regina admitted to taking off Oscar's chain, she said she did that so it would be more difficult to identify him. When asked if she noticed he had been shot in the head when she was stripping him of his chain, Regina responded gruffly, quote, "I wasn't trying to look, ma'am." Regina's defense attorney said the trial was not about whether or not Regina was a little irritable on the stand, and as much as the state tried to break her, he said the state did not at all shake her story. The state's attorney said, quote, "Thank God we were here in court and not in a basement with plastic on the floor. I wouldn't turn my back on her." He also pointed out that the theory of self-defense made no sense because of the plastic placed on the floor where Oscar was shot. Plus, the sisters skipped town, trying to evade the police, and those actions were not typical of shooting someone in self-defense. The jury went to mull over the evidence and witness testimony in Regina's trial. After almost 7 hours, they came to a conclusion. Regina DeFrancisco was found guilty of murder during an armed robbery. The jury for Margaret's trial was deadlocked, 11-1 in favor of a conviction. The one juror was in favor of an acquittal because they couldn't fathom how a teenager could go through with killing someone. Margaret was sent back to jail to wait for a retrial. The day after Regina was found guilty, Margaret was able to bail out and stay at home until her retrial. A few months later, in September of 2004, Regina's sentencing day had arrived. She received a sentence of 35 years in prison. Her attorney said they were not happy with the verdict, and they would pursue an appeal. In November of 2004, Margaret's retrial kicked off. Veronica, who was sentenced to 5 years, testified yet again and presented the same testimony she had the first time. Margaret's defense attorney called her and her sister little girls who reacted badly. He also asked the jurors to not only take a step back from, quote, "stupid attempts to hide Oscar's body, but also ponder if there was enough evidence delivered that proved the armed robbery was planned, adding that the two were little girls who weren't acting like authorities wanted them to, that the truth of the matter was they were in panic mode after Margaret shot Oscar in self-defense." Ultimately, the jury found Margaret guilty of first-degree murder. Her sentencing was in mid-December of 2004, and it was determined that she would spend 46 years in prison. The judge saved her from rotting in a cell, but that's because he said he wanted her to be a senior citizen by the time she might be released. During sentencing, the judge said, quote, "I have never from beginning to end come across a stranger murder case, a rather simple, amateurish plan, but a professional execution. A single mortal shot to the back of the unsuspecting victim's head in her own basement. What could have possibly possessed her or influenced her to be of the mind to end a life and desecrate the body afterward? We'll never know. All of their appeals so far have failed. That concludes this episode about the twisted DeFrancisco sisters and the murder of Oscar Velazquez. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, stay safe and take care.